Hi there, and welcome back to the Energy Sector Heroes podcast. My name is Michelle Fraser, and every week I will speak with incredible people who share their lessons, experiences, and stories from their time spent in the energy sector. Hi there, and welcome back again to this week's episode. If you're new to the show, then please take a second to subscribe and even consider sharing the show with just one other person. This week, I am joined by Michael Way. Michael is the co-owner and manager of Subterra Group. Michael, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. So my name's Michael Way. I am 33 years old, based in Edinburgh, and I'm the co-founder and managing partner of Subterra, and we are a specialist upstream recruitment partner for E&P operators.
How did you get started in your career?
So I would say I've always been kind of sales, business development focused. My early career started in IT and technology, so completely different industry. I used to manage kind of high performing sales teams, and I'm from a small town in the north of England, just kind of outside Manchester. And as you can imagine, you grow up there, you know everyone there, you kind of build your business there, and then it's what's next. So kind of took the opportunity to go and travel a little bit. So traveled kind of Central and South America, ended up in Vancouver, where I lived in Vancouver for a year, and I suppose, got more exposure to international business development, worked with a lot of large kind of multidisciplined companies there, and a little bit of engineering and construction. And I suppose typically in my line of business, you are often kind of headhunted as a bit of a commodity, especially when you start to kind of build a little bit of a reputation and you've done it for X amount of years. Yeah, an opportunity came up in the oil and gas kind of sector, and it's something that's always appealed to me, and something that I was always kind of had my sights set on, just because of I think the complexity of the market, I suppose the excitement of the roles, the exploration, the frontier kind of business. So yeah, I took the opportunity there. I met my current business partner. I actually was the manager of my kind of current business partner, and you work a lot together. You have your successes, your highs and lows, and it just got to the point where I'd worked for so many kind of owners or CEOs or whatever it may be of boutique firms, and you pick things up and you almost want to do things your own way at some point, and you want to take bits from what you've learned in your career. So in March of last year, we actually set Subterra up. Say myself and my business partner, he's a really experienced recruitment professional within this space. And yeah, it was just a great fit together. My kind of business development and kind of international skill set, his recruitment skill set and network. And then it's kind of coming up to the first year of business, and it's been great. So a little bit later to most of your kind of, I suppose, network that you have on, a bit later to the oil and gas market, but something that I've always followed and my heart set on being involved in.
Okay, so what made you decide to work in the energy space then?
I just think you've got to love what you do, right? Especially when you set up a business in it, you've got to know that it's the right market for you. And again, I think it just goes back to the type of people, the type of work, the complexity of the work, the projects. And I've always been a little bit of a risk taker. And I think in this market, certainly on the exploration side and the new ventures, you've got to kind of admire the risks that are taken. And that's something that I've always gravitated towards. I just needed the timing needed to be right in terms of when I got the opportunity to kind of step into the field. And it's fast tracked relatively quickly to the point where you kind of, I'm traveling around a lot, meeting different operators in different countries around the world, and kind of becoming a household name already, which is great. Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, your company works a little bit different to how a general recruitment agency would work. Can you explain, especially to a younger audience, how an executive recruitment agency would work?
Yeah, of course. So I suppose we're not generalists in the sense that we have multiple components and multiple different kind of disciplines that we manage. We literally work within the space that we know and that we can be successful in. I suppose the way in which we typically work is the opposite to most in terms of we don't advertise necessarily the jobs that we're working on. We don't post things on LinkedIn or job boards or whatever it may be. It's very much word of mouth, referrals, kind of who we know. So we would place people in maybe senior positions, and then that person ultimately then would become your client. As they kind of develop through their career, they become a hiring manager and an influential person within that business. And, you know, often relationship led, that then leads to other opportunities and things like that. So I suppose we do look very executive search, and we do executive search, but we also have technical contractors that we work with within the subsurface space. So geologists, reservoir engineers, petroleum engineers. So it's, while we do place a lot of senior professionals, we also kind of work with the technical mandates as well. But it's very much just network. And I always say to people in other industries that, kind of friends or family or whatever it may be, is that it's always good to get a specialist recruitment kind of partner and someone to have and someone to know and that can look out for you and look for opportunities that are off market. So when I go and kind of meet clients, you pick up information that's maybe not public knowledge at this point, or things that are coming down the pipeline that you can almost prep in advance for. So having that network is really beneficial. So we're not reactive, we're proactive, and that's maybe different to the typical high street generalist type agencies.
How would anybody typically get noticed by a specialist recruitment consultancy?
I suppose if you haven't been, I suppose it's not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't mean that, you know, you don't have the right skill set, but I would say just to reach out and kind of open a line of dialogue with someone. We're always open to speaking to kind of anyone, even if it's just to, we sometimes speak to people that maybe are in a slightly left field of oil and gas where maybe we typically wouldn't have a role or an opportunity, but we're still open to kind of support people and put people in touch with people that we may know. So yeah, I think if you've not been contacted, or, you know, it's not something, I think just reach out, check as well, check what the people do, check if it's the right fit for you, if the people seem like people that you'd want to have represent you as well, because it is very much, you know, we do a lot of the preparation work for our candidates. And while these people are obviously really credible and really skilled in what they do, they always feel like it's beneficial to have someone in their corner doing the negotiations and, you know, sometimes following up with feedback, that it just creates that kind of middleman that can help and support you through the process. So, yeah, I just think for anyone, the younger audience, certainly, I just think it's always good to put your name on a specialist kind of recruitment partner's radar, even if you're not looking, just kind of, you know, to have someone look out for you while you're just doing what you're doing, I suppose.
When you're contacting them or yourself, would you have to prepare your CV in a slightly different way, or what's the best?
So it depends on, I suppose it depends on levels, right? So I will kind of want to do it for, I know you, a lot of, like you said, a lot of your audience might be kind of younger professionals or relatively kind of new graduates, whatever it may be. So it varies. So we could help with that in terms of the resume support and resume writing. Even at the executive level, we kind of, you know, some people's resumes may be 10, 15 pages. And you almost look at it and you kind of like, right, what can we pinpoint? So with our executives, we typically write a really kind of high level synopsis, a 1-page, kind of what geographies they've worked in, what key projects they've worked on, and what their ideal mandate would be. So almost kind of what they're looking for. And we do that because then we can just send it to our, whoever our kind of partners would be at the time, or whoever we think is looking, and we can say, this is a really concise snapshot of what this person's done over the last 20, 30, whatever many years, and it's summarized in just a really clear 1 page. For a younger audience, I suppose it's almost, if you need that support, if you want to build a different resume. I've worked for a number of different kind of companies in various industries, and I think it's key to always get, you know, I've wrote so many different resumes for myself, and they're always ever changing and evolving depending on what you want to do, what role you want to go in. So I think having a specialist there that can say, I think we should position you in this way, and this is what we'll do because this will get you the interview. I think it's just having that support from someone. And yeah, people don't always have time to just go away and, really concisely write everything they've ever done and what they want to do. So it's just having a conversation with us, telling us, and then we almost summarize that for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think getting the resume right is key. But we're seeing at the moment that there's, certainly in the UK, there's a lot of people in all levels of, I suppose, in every business, not just our sector, but looking for new roles. And you see a role on LinkedIn, you apply for it, and there's 150 applicants there, and it must be tough to stand out. There's kind of AI and other features involved in that process as well, where they might be automatically scanning the resume and you might not get through for a really minor reason, and you might actually be a really good fit for what you're applying for. So having someone that knows the people that are hiring, aside from just a job board, I think is imperative for the younger audience.
So I was going to go back. I've got a couple of questions I was going to ask you. You mentioned before, and a senior, maybe executive person can have a CV that's maybe 10 pages or so long. Is that really? Because I know that I've always been told to keep your CV as short as possible and only to go back 10 years. But for a 10-page CV, is that normal?
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily it's normal. Maybe it's somewhat a slight over-exaggeration. But I've had one recently that's 8 or 9 pages, and then obviously you've got a bit of a kind of cover page at the start. So I suppose, yeah, it happens and we get them. Even in my kind of a previous background that I worked in was a little bit more international tax and law. And you can imagine those kind of accreditations, they have to be substantial. So 5 or 6 pages is the norm. But if you've got a 20, 25-year career, it does extend that long. And obviously people aren't going to read that many pages, but it's difficult to, I suppose it's difficult to summarize someone's 30-year career in 1 page or 2 pages where it's really going to stand out and be impactful. But I think a resume is it's an important part. It shows how you present yourself, but also it's just a reference point, really. It should be a reference point. It should just be, this is a little snapshot, but I know it's difficult for people at the moment because you see that volume of applicant for the role that you're going for, especially that junior to mid-level, and it's sort of like, how am I going to get noticed if I don't have that substance there?
Okay. How would a younger graduate person get that substance?
In this field, it depends which route you want to go down, right? If you want to work for a larger, like a super maybe, for example, and you want to do the training and development through them, whether it be an internship or a graduate kind of program, I'd say that would probably be a really good way to do it, because then you're going to be taught in a certain way. Doesn't necessarily always translate in the future to smaller independents or mid-sized independents, whatever it may be. But yeah, I just think it's looking at who's going to give you the best training and the best kind of quality in your early career that you can really showcase and learn and showcase what you can do. But it's tough. There's no, our market's the same as kind of every other global market. There's a skills shortage, which is the advantage maybe in our area. You see a lot of people that are at that age now that, they're coming to retirement, and even in our market, that retirement age is quite high because people love what they do and they want to stay on to, past the norms. But we're even seeing the skill drop off at that top end now. And I don't know what the numbers are, but we were discussing it last week, that the graduate programs that maybe were once, booming with people applying aren't necessarily getting the numbers they once were before. And I see that as almost an advantage, to people coming in that want to do petroleum engineering or whatever it may be. There's a shortage, right? There's a gap. So I think if people do want to specialize in this market, it's also a really good time to do so. You just got to go for it.
Okay. But applying for maybe jobs in petroleum, I think a lot of when I speak to a lot of the people that listen to my podcast, a lot of the younger professionals are more looking to move into renewables.
Yeah.
How to make things, better and reduce the carbon footprint and things like that. So they're not really looking to go into maybe the traditional oil and gas. Is that going to be a problem in the future?
It's a tough one. So we do energy transition roles as well, kind of CCS, hydrogen. So it's not something that we're not changing. We're not just sticking to the traditional kind of oil and gas. But I suppose, does oil and gas have a future? Energy has a future, and oil and gas is going to play a part in that, right? It's still going to play a part. And from experience, so speaking to a number of operators across Europe this last 3 months, a lot of the plans to move to the low carbon and renewables piece have been, I don't want to say scrapped, that's the wrong way to say it, but they've been postponed, and they're looking at the exploration piece still, and they're looking at, a balance of how they bring the two together. So it's still something that's there, but it's a longer term, I suppose, a partnership of the two. It's not getting rid of one for the other. So I still think there is opportunity there. And I think wouldn't tell a graduate now to not necessarily follow the path that they wanted to follow with the low carbon renewables, because I feel like we'll be further along by the time they come through. The kind of, to the point, we'll be much further along, and there'll be more opportunity for people in that space to really kind of jump into a role and develop and things like that. I think we were just a little bit early to move people over so quickly and go all into the kind of low carbon and renewable piece.
Okay, so I was going to go back to ask you one question. You were saying that there's a lot of AI being used by, people that are recruiting it, and quite rightfully so, because they have to sift through maybe hundreds and hundreds of CVs now. What do you think about the other end of the spectrum, whereas maybe somebody looking for work might be tempted to tailor their CV to the job description using AI? What's your take on that?
I feel like you can tell. I'll be honest. So a lot of my, obviously I'm on LinkedIn quite frequently, just anyway, just looking at the news, looking at what's going on, press releases and things like that. And I think if someone has wrote a post maybe, or they're looking for work or whatever, I think it's just, you can really tell when it's been written by ChatGPT or AI, or it's just obvious. And also you've got to remember that, say there are 100 applicants, person's looking through them, and then you've maybe got a batch that are almost all tailored to the job description. It just stands out so clearly. So yeah, I think we're at the point now where I would urge people to stick to the human approach. I suppose one of the differences myself and Chris, my business partner, have is that we've always wrote quite formal and quite corporate. That's kind of how we've wrote. So sometimes we'll write an email and you look at it and you're like, that looks like maybe AI's actually wrote that email. And it's genuinely just how we are and how we kind of articulate ourselves. But one of the things that we're mindful of now is trying to make our emails a little bit more personal and a bit more human, but still keep the professionalism. So yeah, I would urge people to use it as a tool to kind of, make sure your spelling's right, just things like that. But I wouldn't get it to rewrite things for you, because it just stands out. You can tell.
Yeah, how can you tell though?
I suppose if you say you get a volume for a role, you're going to get 3 or 4 that are closely worded and closely articulated, and there's certain kind of keywords that pop up. I don't want to give you all the keywords because it gives people ideas then to then change certain things, but there are key tells in it where it just looks obvious, and even punctuation is somewhat edited slightly, and you can just say that, like, a human wouldn't have put that hyphen in that position. And when you've seen it too many times, it just stands out from the page, I suppose. So but I do think we also need to use it, right? It's a technology that's developing. It's something that I think for us, we never had it in my kind of generation. Now we've got it, same as we were in a privileged place because we've gone through not having certain things to then having technology, and we've learned without it. Now we're learning with it, and I think we're in a really good spot. But yes, I think graduates coming through need to be mindful of using it too much and relying on it too heavily.
I was about to say a lot of the young professionals probably rely on it heavily, but probably a lot of everybody relies on maybe the AI quite heavily. Do you think it's going to change the way that we work?
I think it has to an extent in terms of, well, it depends how you, again, it depends what you do and how you use it, right? So I think there were certain tools you can use for kind of calendar management and things like that. I think all the kind of little bits in the background that make your life easier, it's great for. But I think there's always, when you need a human touch, I think you should try and keep that. And that's kind of resume writing or sending in an application or whatever it may be. Again, use it for spell checking, use it for kind of how you've structured a certain sentence or whatever it may be, but don't get it to write or rewrite kind of something that's meant to be personable. And, I just think that's why we need to be careful. But I do think it's definitely changed the way we work and the way we do research, right, as well. Say I do a lot of different meetings, and I can remember so much, right? Like I'm speaking to an operator that's maybe doing something in, I don't know, in the Caspian, and then I'm speaking to someone in the Middle East that's doing something unconventional. And there were so many nuances to the work that you're doing. You almost want to have a little bit of a quick understanding. And I think it's great to sometimes use the technology to say, I'm having a call with this person. This is the type of kind of conversation I want it to be like. Is there anything I need to know from the recent news at the moment that I should be aware of? And it just gives you a few prompts to be like, oh, well, this has actually happened and this is that. And maybe going away and finding that information on your own would have, taken 2 or 3 times as long, and you've just got it there quick. Right, that's great. And it just gives you an idea before you go in of a few bits of information that you want to bring up and use. But you can easily get carried away with just using that then for everything you do. And it's not always accurate as well. I've seen kind of AI make certain mistakes sometimes because it's not fully up to date with what's going on and fully up to date with current kind of trends, whatever it may be. So I also think you need to not use it as whatever it tells you is gospel and face value.
Going back to the CVs and AI, you said that before that you can easily tell if a CV's been written by AI. Is it automatically ditched then, the CV? Or disqualified, I should say?
It depends. I suppose it depends. Again, from our side, because of the level that we work at, we're not getting an influx of, we're not getting multiple AI applications or anything like that. We don't kind of experience it. But I know recruitment firms that I've either worked with previously or that I know people that work for them, and they're more, like I say, more generalist, and they'll get high volumes of applications. They see it, and it depends on the person, right? And it depends on how you view it. Because would you see it as negligence or maybe a little bit lazy, or would you see it as someone maximizing their time to get their foot in the door? It depends. I mean, I said I could only speak hypothetically about how I would view it if it came over to me, just because it's not typically the level that we'd work at. We wouldn't get 100 applications for our roles. So it depends which way you view it. But I would say that if you were down to the wire and someone had done something that looks personable, human, doesn't look like it's been written by kind of a program, you would more inclined, if you were torn between two, you would be more inclined to go for the person that's taken the time to do it that way.
Okay. How would a young professional write their CV to make, because it is hard. I mean, even for senior professionals now, it's very hard to get your foot in the door. For a young professional, maybe looking to maybe move up the career ladder and maybe go to a different company and try and compete with some of the senior people that's already maybe got 15, 20 years experience. How can they compete with that?
I would say certainly something that I try to help, again, mainly my kind of like circle or my friendship group, if they're looking for different things and it's, I've sent in an application for this, I've not heard back yet, or whatever it may be, I always try to say, would you maybe make a phone call and ask if you could speak to the hiring manager and just say, listen, I'm sending across my resume, kind of really interested in this role. Appreciate you're going to get a lot of applications, but just wanted to introduce myself. This is who I am. Really excited about kind of the prospect of potentially working for you. Just keep an eye out for my application. Just a little bit of like something, because like you say, resume writing is difficult, and it is only a portion of, I suppose, you can only do so much on a piece of paper that you're sending over to someone, and you hope that it lands in the right way. It depends who's reading it as well, right? It depends how their perception of your words. Oh, like, you've got HR and talent people that are reading them. You might have hiring managers that are reading them. And my approach to speaking with HR people and culture people is very different to how I would speak to a subsurface manager or an EVP of exploration, for example. It's all very different, because you know that they want different things, and you wouldn't know that unless you'd worked with multiple different countries. So from myself, I know, I'm saying all this as if I know, because it's been my kind of career path for the last however many years. But as a graduate, I just think it's about standing out, or as a new professional, sorry, it is about standing out and just kind of taking it into your own hands a little bit. And I know it's really uncomfortable to ring the hiring manager and introduce yourself on a bit of a kind of cold type call, but does that land, and does it have impact, and does it make you look different to the 25, 30 other resumes that they're reviewing that day? Probably, because they'll remember you, and they'll remember that kind of, you put yourself out there and you said, hey, listen. So yeah, I think it's just about trying to be a little bit different.
Okay.
Send the resume, but do something else as well. Send an email, because you can find the person on LinkedIn who's hiring. Sometimes the jobs put it on there, right? They put who the hiring manager is or who the hiring contact is. Just send a LinkedIn note, little, hey, sending this over now, hope it lands in the way I want it to. Just something different to stand out.
And do you think that helps?
Yeah, 100%. I've seen it help. Like I said, it's kind of something that I would recommend to people that I know, or people that have reached out to me. As soon as you work in recruitment, everyone thinks that you can get them a job. They don't really care what you specialize in or what it may be. It's, you know what to do, help me. And it's just something I always say is, don't just send an application. Or on the other side of things, it's almost being proactive, right? So say you have a younger professional that wants to work for, I don't know, give me an example. They want to work for Total. It's been their dream to kind of work for Total. That's what they want to do. But there's no jobs in their specific remit at Total. That's fine. That's no problem. It doesn't say there's not going to be. But it also, they don't always necessarily advertise, or when they do advertise, maybe they've already got a few people earmarked for the role, but they have to advertise because that's the procedure that they have to do, right? So what I would say is, you want to work for Total, write a resume, find out who potentially is in charge of HR and hiring, or find the discipline lead who, whatever you specialize in, and just send them a note and say, listen, I'm really keen on working for your company. This is who I am and what I'm about. I'm hoping at some point in my career to work for you. If anything comes up, or if you've got any tips or any guidance, I would welcome 5 or 10 minutes of your time. Also helps, because if something does come up and they need something, or you're just the kind of first person that comes to mind because you just did something slightly differently. Now, and I also know that you can say that, and not everyone's going to do that right either, because it is difficult. Because on LinkedIn now, or whatever it may be, any job site, you can have your resume and you can apply to 100 jobs in 10 minutes, really. You click and apply, click and apply, click and apply, and it's sending the same resume over. So you can apply for so many jobs that sometimes you get a phone call and you don't know, what it is that you're getting interviewed about on the phone, because you've applied to that many things. And that works both ways. So just reaching out and introducing yourself for the future can just put yourself on someone's radar. And I think that's really important to do. For me, something that someone always said to me years and years ago was, maybe in my younger sales days, when maybe I had a bit more of an ego, it was, don't be the smartest person in the room. And I was like, oh, yeah, no, that's a really, really good point. It's like, always put myself in a situation where the people have done it for longer, been more successful, whatever it may be, and then just learn from them people. So always putting yourself in that environment, you kind of get exposure to it, but then you also open your network up into, all these people are running businesses or running teams or whatever it may be, and you've been around that and been accustomed to it. And then you're the first kind of phone call if something comes up, because then they don't have to go out of the way to write a job brief, send it to HR, get approval. They can say, hey, I actually know a guy that I want to bring in. I'm going to give him a call and see if he's open or she's open or whatever it may be. So I think being proactive, literally, I said this to one of my friends a week ago, pick 5 companies that you want to work for, send them all this little note. This is you. This is what your experience is. This is what you're interested in doing. And he was like, oh, there's no jobs on the website. Doesn't matter. Just send it, because the least you're going to do is put yourself in front of someone, have a coffee. Maybe in a year, there'll be something. So that's what I think. Just be bold and different.
Okay. So, assuming that we've got past the initial screening and you're going to interview, how can you prepare, and can you really oversell yourself?
I think I always used to over prepare. And I suppose it's the same, would have been the same up until maybe a few years ago, where I'm going into a client meeting and I know everything about everything that's going on. And 90% of what you've prepared and just doesn't even factor in the conversation and doesn't come up. And I think sometimes you can be like, you leave then the room and you're like, oh, I had so many things that I wanted to articulate and I didn't. Now I'm a lot less prepared, but then I also don't know if that's because I'm more experienced and I kind of, I can lean on experiences or conversations that I've had and successes that I've had, and I can almost that's how the conversation goes. I just think, being prepared is key. I've always said that to everyone, just because you can tell if someone's not, right? You can say straight away if someone's just took an hour out of the night to scan a website and tell you what your opening line is on the website. Well, I don't think HR people do that necessarily too much anymore, where they're like, what do you know about my company? It's a bit of an old school way of thinking. Yeah, I think being prepared, almost talk about what you want. I think it's like, what do you want to achieve? I think that lands sometimes, rather than, because what's the hiring manager going to get from you telling them that the business was set up in 1960 and the focus was this and then it's transferred to this? Like, they know that, right? They just want to see if HR normally just want to see if you've done some research and bothered before you turned up. But I think it's more around what you can do value-wise and what value you can add to the business. Maybe looking at some recent news or some recent projects and say why that interested you, what you feel you could bring to that. If it was, just share some insight and some ideas. And I used to really hate the interviews. I shouldn't say this, to be fair, but I used to really hate the ones where it was almost that competency based. Like, tell me a time in your life where you've overcome this, or tell me this, or tell me that. I used to just have a really open conversation with people, because I think when you get talking after half an hour, they kind of forget it's an interview, and then you start to see how they articulate themselves, what really kind of, how they really are when they settle into something a little bit and what really matters to them, rather than asking someone, tell me a time in your life where you've had to deal with conflict in the workplace. I mean, I don't know much I'm going to get from that conversation. So be prepared, but also be able to articulate where your value add would be, and don't make it generic. Don't make it something that that 10 other people could go in and say.
Okay. Do you think during your career that somebody that's a young professional and somebody who's maybe senior with maybe over 20, 25 years, 30 years experience, do you think that they get interviewed differently? Or did they still get challenged? Did they still get challenged on their knowledge? Or is it automatically assumed that they would already know their knowledge?
It's a good question, because I suppose there is an assumption that if you see someone at a certain level, like you say, you automatically assume that they will have done that. But things change in people's careers as well, right? Sometimes you can be really senior, but so far removed from actual kind of day to day, maybe. Do you know, if you've got 150, 200 reports directly or non-directly, you almost maybe you're more overseeing how things work, how an organization actually kind of flows every day rather than actually dealing with a technical problem or a solution. So sometimes I think it's the same for both. It depends what the role's for as well. We've had situations where we've put people forward for the job, and the worst thing we can hear is that they're overqualified for the position. But you get that sometimes where, someone's done so much in their career, but they may be really interested in working for a specific company again or a specific project, or they want to get back into kind of hands-on driving exploration or whatever it may be. But it's like, oh, you've managed all these people, you've done this, you've done that. Like, I just want an explorer that's just going to do this, and you've not done that for so many years. So I do think there's differences on both sides. A more junior person will have got that role, and our candidate was a very good fit for the company and for the role and things like that. But they're like, no, we want to come back to you, but we just need to figure out where we can open a more senior role for that. And they would have been more than happy to do that position. But again, someone who's a little bit more junior, who's just been doing it every day, would have got the advantage on that one. So it kind of works both ways. It depends what you're kind of going for and what you want to do. But there shouldn't be an assumption that everyone, you should still want to get the same information, whether it's a super senior person or someone who's kind of mid-level coming up in the career. I think you want the same thing. You shouldn't make assumptions, because assumptions can cost you down the line.
I know the answer to this question. For our younger audience, how could it potentially cost a company down the line, and yourself and your own reputation, of course?
Yeah, so I suppose this is what, we set the business up based on our reputation, right? So that's like, it's such a key thing for especially a small boutique company. Like, we're boutique in the sense of the area we work in and the size of scope, but then we work globally. So we're in like 6 different kind of regions around the world. So you're like, oh, you're a global business, but you're a very small global business. So our reputation's kind of key, and we don't want to so we do a lot of kind of fact checking and screening before we even put people in front of hiring managers, whatever it may be. But this is where I suppose recruitment firms typically would add value, right? It's all the layers before putting someone in front of you. It saves time. So the cost is time, right? Everyone's really busy interviewing people, putting you through like X amount of processes, takes time out of people's days from doing what they're meant to be doing. The hiring fee that agencies get, I suppose, that's how we get paid. I suppose you hire someone, you pay us as a fee. It's a percentage of the salary, so there's that cost as well. And then if that person doesn't work out in the first year, or you've mishired based on a number of different factors, the cost is that you go back through the whole process again. And it's the time thing's the main thing, of course, but then it's the investment in the person, the investment in the introductory bit. I mean, some inductions maybe 1 to 2 months of kind of onboarding and training and development and things like that. And everyone in the business is kind of contributing to that. So it's hard to measure the cost, but it would be substantial, and you don't want anyone rehiring. And one of the kind of, I had to do a presentation last week for a number of HR professionals, and one of the questions they asked was around, it was interesting actually, it was a different question, I wasn't expecting it. It was around the poaching of staff. So if we were partnered with the company, would we still move people out of that company? And I was like, you should expect everything, but it wasn't one that anyone's ever directly asked me before necessarily. And I just said the reason we obviously want to do business, or the way we want to do business, is we want to place people in a business that they stay and grow in and develop in, that they ultimately then become an asset to us from the inside of that business, because they then become a manager, a leader. They need contractors or they need staff to work for them. So our goal is always to place people with the right company, where we want to just work with that company for the years. It doesn't just we don't do transactional, put someone in, they work there, then we move on to the next thing, and that's no longer our concern. It's about kind of building relationships and putting the right people in the roles, and then they become future partners. So yeah, I just think the cost piece of going through the hiring process again and again, and then you miss people, right? Someone else may be hired who might have been the right fit for the role, and they've then gone elsewhere, and then they're no longer available as well. So it's just a knock-on effect of getting it wrong. So we try to minimize that, and that's what like a good recruitment firm should do. They should minimize the risk when you hire. Like you can't always get it right as well. You don't know what someone's life's gonna look like in a year from now. I mean, I suppose we somewhat get personal with our kind of candidates in terms of like families. The children's age sometimes has always been imperative, right? Because if the children are at school and not at university, you know, if the role's in a relocation from the UK to Asia, the knock-on effect of that on the family and the dynamic and how that's going to change, is that long-term going to fit that family to do that? So we always try to be super transparent and highlight to say we put a short list of 3 people forward. We won't say every person's a 10 out of 10 and they're all excellent. We'll say we put these people forward based on what you need because of X, Y, and Z, but also where we think you should probe a little bit, or where we've seen maybe, there could be some issues, would be this and this. And then it's up to you to then decide if that's a risk to you or not. So yeah, we always try to be really honest and transparent.
Okay. It's really interesting. I was going to ask you maybe one final question. What career advice would you give to any young professionals coming into the energy space?
I suppose again, it goes back to getting a partner that does it right. So again, like we're not going to be necessarily the right partner for younger professionals. Maybe not right now. I mean, I think again, it's still good to reach out to people that do what you almost want to do in your career. Reach out to people that have done it, that are involved in it. I'd say network, right? It's invaluable. If your network is full of people that are in management or in leadership positions, or, they've done what you want to do and they've kind of walked the path you want to walk, just connect with them, discuss with them, ask them for any advice. And having that network always means that you're going to be kind of bringing in opportunities that might not have been there, because you're going to see things, you're going to know people, you're going to hear things, and you're just putting yourself in the best position. Just be bold as well, like just do things differently. Again, I think, when you talked about AI and how you can see it and how you can spot it and things, like you just want people to stand out and be different and bring an energy. And I think for younger people at the moment, I see it as a real opportunity, because there's a balance at the minute that we've not quite found with people, say 25 and under, where it's that we've gone through this weird work-life balance thing where almost life is, we don't want to work because we just want to enjoy our life, but we also want to be paid to enjoy our life. And certainly in sales, I've interviewed a number of people over the years where they've come in and the first question they've asked me as a hiring manager is how many days they can work from home and things like that. And listen, I get, like, I set this business up so I could be more flexible with my time and things. So I understand that, but I would never open with how many days can I work from home and things like that. And I think there's an opportunity for someone that is coming out of college or is coming out of university that knows what they want to do. They can bypass a lot of people by just being dedicated to working, trying to better themselves and putting themselves in as many uncomfortable positions as possible by reaching out to people that are senior, whatever it may be. So I see it as an opportunity at the minute rather than a negative or a struggle. Like I know it is as well. I'm not naive to the fact that, there's a lot of competition as well. But I just think if you can stand out and you know the right people, it's ultimately going to get you further. Hope that answers that question a little bit.
I think it did. Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It was amazing, actually. So I'm going to end the conversation there on that very positive note. So that's all the questions I have today. I would like to thank Michael for your time. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening and see you next week. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, I'd like to gently encourage you to leave a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts and share the show with another person. You can also follow me on LinkedIn or via my website, www.michellefraserconsultancy.com. Thanks again for listening and see you next week.